All right, let's get into it. So, good morning, team. Hope you're all well. We've just released our annual results, so a good time to catch up and go through some of the highlights.
Very exciting.
Very exciting, yes, you're right. Explain some of the points that have come from it and maybe explain a couple of things for the audience as well, but more just a bit of a catch up and take a breath, given we listed only, what was it, a couple of months ago now. It's less than a quarter, but it seems like it's been a lot longer than that. So true to the Tetratherix culture and the way we do things, we've achieved a lot even in the last couple of months since listing. So as I said, good chance for us to take a breath and maybe just explain and go over some of the things that we've put together and have also communicated in the annual briefing as we've just announced. So good morning.
Morning.
So look, yeah, how's everyone feeling after the listing? Probably that's the one thing that I thought might be good to start off with, and obviously an exciting couple of months, and the performance I think has been an indication as to I think the message that we've got around the technology, the team, and the look forward around milestones that we've got coming across the platform. But yeah, how's everyone feeling?
Enthused.
Enthused in one word?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, excited. It's we always said it's just a new chapter. It was milestones in the way that we operate, and it's glad to see that we can get on with the business and start sort of like keep continuing in delivering milestones, as we said. So no, excited, enthused, both.
Yeah, and I think for me, I guess, really excited to issue the first annual report as a listed company. One of my most exciting year ends, I would say. Sort of doing that for the first time, and very excited to share some of the strong financials that we've got coming through.
And I think it's been a fast-paced start to listed life. Obviously, going from listing on 30 June into a quarterly into annual results. So from that perspective, I think, Cherie and the finance team have done a great job in putting a lot of that work together in the reporting. But I think probably goes to show just how a lot of the preparation work that we've done prior to listing is now coming to fruition. And we'll get into some of those points as we go through today's discussion around biooptics in particular, and we've just announced our IGP grant, which is again a really exciting milestone for the business. So let's go through a bit of that and explain some of the numbers in a bit of detail, but I think also maybe just going through some of those key strategic areas that we're communicating in the annual report as we're moving forward into not only the reflection on the year that's been, but also looking forward into FY26, which we're now well and truly into. So how about we get started with that? Maybe we'll go through the key areas of the strategy and the platform that we've got in the annual report around how we look back in the mirror as to what FY25 had. Obviously listing is a big part of that, but then obviously going into FY26 and how we're going to measure ourselves against what we have as our objectives across the business. So maybe what I can do just to set the scene for everyone to sort of give me their 2 cents and go through how they think about these strategic pillars, but let's outline them from the outset. Firstly, having clinically innovative solutions, so being very technically minded and technically focused across the platform is the big part of the strategy that we need to have as the forefront. Patients are always going to be the centre point and the core of what we're trying to deliver, and so I think that relates to that. Maybe just to touch on this piece firstly around having clinically innovative solutions across the platform. Ali, maybe from a technical point of view, being the creator, if you like, of the very core part of this technical platform, what does that mean to you, and how does it kind of manifest itself in what we're doing as a business?
Absolutely. So the genesis of what we do is to use our platform technology and address unmet clinical needs for patients. So patients is the key, is that sort of like a core of like what we do, and using our platform technology to address truly unmet clinical needs. These needs can be for patients in developed countries, for developing countries, depending on where those problems are coming from. They can be having a variety of applications and different propositions in mind. For example, our biooptics proposition is to address the needs while we're also addressing some of the environmental concerns in respects to the products that are currently available in the market. So it comes in this sort of like a whole package multifaceted approach to address needs that are both clinicians, patients, and essentially everyone needs to be addressed.
Yeah, for sure. And it is that very important core pillar of what we're doing around faster and cheaper access to healthcare, right? And I think that's really where the platform comes into its own. And we've talked about some of the differentiation technically in being minimally invasive, safe, biomimetic, and modular, which are those four very key sort of differentiators across the platform. So you're right, I think patients are and always will be the core part of what we're doing across the mission and the culture of the business. So that, I think, rightly needs to be number one, which it is, and we'll be reporting on how we meet our objectives across that patient-centric objective, both in retrospect for every financial year and then moving forward it forms what we want to do as a business. So I think that, as I said, is a really important piece of the puzzle. So the second one is having long-lasting partnerships. So for me, how I think about partnerships is both internal and external, but really at the front of all of that is the commercial partners we have in bringing these kind of products and technologies to market to actually have as much patient impact as we can. Cherie, how do you think about the partners, who they are, how we measure ourselves, but also what is a long-lasting partnership and how does it look like?
Yeah, look, I think for me, and I guess coming from sort of multinationals, these things take time, but I think it's on both sides. For me, it's kind of like making sure we're very strategic and deliberate about who we choose as a partner. So yes, they're doing due diligence on us, but we're also doing that due diligence back to really make sure it's, a 15 plus year arrangement, not, a distribution agreement for the next 3 years.
Totally, yeah, I agree. I think those partnerships are a very key part of bringing a platform material or platform opportunity to market as well, because as we've talked about through the prospectus and through the IPO and ongoing, these are all partnerships that are working in parallel that will compound in revenue and high gross margin over time, not to get too far ahead of the patient piece into the financials, but it does make sense for us to bring these partnerships to market in parallel across the board.
Well, absolutely, and we see that the caliber of those partnerships very early on in the process with the quality of the questions that they ask and what they care and what they don't care in our engagement. So absolutely.
Yep, and I think an important piece of the puzzle here that we need to note is partnerships are the corporate partners that we have, but important to also keep in mind a lot of the physicians and the KOL partners that we have, not only in identifying the opportunities, but also helping us to collect the data. And we talk about some of the clinical trials we're working on in both Tetratherix and Tetraderm, and the key opinion leaders and the physicians there are a big part of that key pillar as well. So partners are not only just the commercial partner, but also the physician and the customer partnerships in there as well. So so I think that's another really important part of what we're doing. The next one is engaged people, and I think for us to get to the point that we're at, the IPO is one piece of that. But also if you think about the last 15 years of R&D and where we're going, we could not have done any of that without the team that we're so lucky to have that is growing, but I think is also a very, very important part of the business and who we are. And so people, I think for us, when we talk about having engaged people, it's having motivated staff who feel like they're heard, they're appreciated, they're valued, and so I think rightly so, this is a very, very important part of our strategic pillars and our objectives. So maybe Tez, for you around sort of how you think about the people within the business and how they've evolved over time, but importantly, how we think about bringing people on the journey to help us grow and meet our objectives in the future.
Look, it's we've seen it from the outset, right? We started just the two of us, and we've had the team grow from 2 to 20 plus in a short span of 10 years. Most of it coming in the last 2. Now, look, when we bring people on, they know they're coming into a dynamic organisation. They know that they're going to utilize their skill set, but hopefully contribute to the broader skill set of the team. And I think we look for people that can be sort of a jack of all trades, wear different hats when needed, and that's really contributed to the culture.
Exactly, and that's something that I think like a new personnel is also appreciated. Our university graduates, they really like what they see, the fact that they can jump onto to the finance, to the quality, to the research. I think that's been a very important approach. We call it Navy SEAL approach, that we got united to be able to address the requirements, address the needs commercially, technically, financially. So yeah, I completely agree with that.
And I think for me, I guess joining the team fairly recently, just the patient-centric approach and the fact that we're all sort of very purpose-led is something that I think really, unites us as a team. And we've introduced our values of innovation, collaboration, curiosity and humility, and so that is something we are living and breathing, and bringing the team better, closer together as we grow, from 2 to 20 people. So
Steep jump.
And I think a lot of that increase previously, but increasingly as we progress into commercialisation and production, there will be a larger increase proportional in the production and manufacturing capabilities of the business as we're moving on. And so that, I think, rightly so, is the fourth, if you like, of the strategic objectives and the pillars that we're working through. So Tez, might be a good opportunity just for you to very quickly touch on how we've progressed the advanced manufacturing capabilities of the business. Obviously the IGP grant that we've just got announced in the last month or so is a big part of the recognition of what we've done in that advanced manufacturing capability, but also importantly from a team, a culture and a capabilities perspective, how does the next sort of 6 to 12 months look for us in advanced manufacturing and the capabilities around it?
Yeah, look, the last year has been an absolute success, I can say, with the team being able to pull off a 7 times increase in the production throughput from our current facility. Now that is no small feat. It requires extreme dedication. Like I said, people were picking up slack and optimizing a process and a workflow that's dynamic, and we're able to hit that 7x milestone, which is getting to commercial scale, which is exactly what we want.
Yeah, it's awesome. No, I think it's one of the things that I think has rightly been recognised by the federal government through the IGP, and we'll get into that in a little bit, just on kind of what that means and the mechanics around that. But I do genuinely think and believe that we have an opportunity here to be the next Australian leader in advanced manufacturing, for not only within the medical technology and the medtech sphere, but just more broadly in export of really sort of deep tech and complex science that is, at the heart of what we do in the research capabilities of Australian universities, and this is a perfect example. So, yeah, very exciting.
Yeah, and as Ali touched on before, I mean, the university grads that we seem to be picking up one after the other are coming to us, and I honestly believe they are drawn by that advanced manufacturing capabilities.
Absolutely.
For sure. So the last one of these 5 strategic pillars or objectives that we work through now in this annual report, but then we will continue to do so over time, is value creation. Now obviously that relates to our shareholders, our investors, our staff and people who are in and around the business. Now obviously the IPO has been a very significant milestone for us as a business, and also creating value for our shareholders, but I think it's important just to reinforce our view as a management team and as a business around the listing, how we think about share price, etc. We do really believe that this is the start of the next chapter. It's not an exit event. It's never been sort of thought of in that way, and really what I see the IPO as being is an inflection point in the business as we near commercialisation. And the value creation that comes from that is not thinking about the share price or the dollars that relate to it. It's about delivery on the strategy. And so I think, as we've sort of demonstrated, I think over the last couple of months of being a listed business, we are all about this relentless execution. And I think it might be worth just very quickly, as we relate this to value creation, let's unpack that relentless execution a little bit, that I think is a very, very important and core part of our DNA, which has been from the outset of the business when you guys were going through all of that very sort of early ground up development of the business, but ever since, we've always been about relentless execution across the business. So Ali, I think that's probably one of the things that I think we're most proud about as part of our culture and our DNA. How do you think about and I suppose prioritise this relentless execution for the business as we move into this next phase of growth?
Absolutely. I can't agree more, Will. And one good things out of this IPO process was the fact that we could essentially outline the major milestones that we would like to achieve within the funding period of 2 years, and relentlessly working towards meeting those milestones is a very good way of demonstrating how we have done this, and we will continue to deliver based on these milestones. And I like the fact that these milestones are not all technical and R&D. It's a perfect combination of preclinical, clinical development, as well as the commercials, financial, as well as the operational from advanced manufacturing. So that's genesis of variety of the milestones in the different fields that are related and are important to the overall success of the business. I think that is what makes us very unique in both in our delivery and as well as our messaging to the market. So yes, it's been a very critical part of our DNA from the inception.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that I think, Cherie, we've probably seen in the numbers as well, and we're going to touch on this in a little bit, but I think one of the key points that came out of the analysis and how we think about our output and that relentless execution is the efficiency that we have within the business and how we think about the delivery on these execution points as a proportion of our staffing. So maybe just on that piece, it might be good just to get your take on that. And you've done some great work on how we actually, from a objective and numerical perspective, actually quantify that.
Yeah, look, I think if I start with the numbers, we've done some work in terms of our operating model and looking at a spend per employee. So if we think about our total overheads, and you'll see in the financials that we have increased our headcount quite materially in F25, but our spend per employee and the efficiency that we're getting is slightly improved versus FY24. So that really speaks to that capital light structure. That is our foundational core of the business, and we can scale as we need to. So we don't have a big fixed cost base, which is something, as a CFO is always very pleasing to see. And we can invest over time and be very deliberate and choiceful about where we do invest.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's, I'm excited to keep coming back to that number as well and see how we measure ourselves against that as the business progresses, as we grow and transition into this sort of commercial entity that we talk about. So look, in summary, I think it's good to recap and to have a view on what are these core strategic pillars of the business. We've covered off what they are, what they mean to us, and also how they form the corporate strategy from a broader perspective. And so I think, again, as we have this line in the sand around our annual results and our briefing that we've just recently gone through with our market and our shareholder base, it's good to keep that in mind and to explain it as we move forward. So anything I've missed there that you wanted to cover off or to go through? I think we've gone through most of that.
Yeah.
So then as we now progress into a commercial business, and as we talked about in the IPO through the prospectus, but again, we touch on in these annual briefings, we are nearing commercial launch for some of our products, which is a really exciting inflection point for us as a business. As we again recap some of the things that we've gone through in FY25, Ali, it might be good just to get your view on some of the more technical or product-oriented milestones that we've seen recently in FY25. Again, having only listed a couple of months ago, we still have had progress across the platform, but maybe just touch on a couple of the points around FDA approval on the path to having those products in market, but then how it relates to maybe some of the clinical trials that we've got progressing along the timeline as well.
Sure. So from an FDA point of view, so we had 3 pre-submission meetings in FY25. So 2 of them were for Tetratherix, our dental products for bone regeneration applications, and 1 was for Tetratherix, our prostate spacing joint venture propositions that we are having. So our latest one was for Tetratherix, that was, I believe, in May 25. So it was way after the new administrations, all the changes in the FDA. It was very critical for us, both from the propositions and a Tetratherix development point of view, as well as to having a better understanding of what is happening with FDA and so on and so forth. So it was a very successful pre-submission meetings for Tetratherix. We basically got something around 85 to 90% of the questions that we wanted answered by FDA. We didn't notice significant change in the way that the FDA works and operates, which is a very good news for us. And it was something that was expected, and based on our inputs that we had in the industry, that medical devices being least impacted by the new administrations for the FDA process.
So you think it's more drug focused?
It seems that it is a very much drug focus.
Because we've been asked a bit about this over the last few months.
Yeah, absolutely.
Around our experience and interpretation of what the changes at the FDA have meant. And I agree, I think from what we're seeing, and you'll get onto Tetratherix as well as our experience there, but it seems to be more the drugs and therapeutics that have been affected at this point.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's good to know that devices is on track.
On track. So Tetratherix, the other example was we had a meeting Tetratherix early in the year, but we received the feedback from FDA ahead of the what we normally would have received, which again further sort of like a showcase and validate that it's been less impact on the medical device compared to the drug, which I think is so very good. And like talking about like the other developments that we had, we invented a new polymer in financial year 25 for our eye surgery for our Bioptics joint venture. We followed new patents for that. So just sort of like going back to the basics of the materials. Our product is a white gel for the eye surgery. We needed to be like a transparent so surgeons can see it through. So that was the genesis of that new polymer they invented as a part of our platform.
It really highlights the platform nature of our business. That's for me is just so cool, right? You know, it's just like, oh yeah, I'm just going to invent this new polymer over here in formulation. Okay, great.
I think that was one of your first interactions with me. I was just like, do you know? I said, yeah, I know.
Came upstairs and you just introduced something new. I'm like, great. I'd been here for 3 weeks.
Yeah, actually, I came upstairs with a beaker in hand. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been a very interesting from both like a regulatory point of view as well as some product development. And talking about the other side of the joint venture, JV, our Tetratherix joint venture, we initiated our first in-human clinical study in Gold Coast. We will start recruiting patients also in Melbourne in addition to the Gold Coast as we already recruited patients. So we believe that we will get into that clinical trial very efficiently in the next few months with the aim to start our US clinical trial for Tetratherix.
So maybe just on that, it'd be good just quickly to cover off. So as far as the progression through the Tetratherix study, maybe just explain how the safety cohort works and why we want to go through the approval of the safety cohort first before progressing and how it relates to ethics. But I think also it'd be good just to get an idea as to the checkpoints that you need to go through for these types of clinical trials.
Sure, absolutely. So the safety cohort that was essentially defined by us originally and approved by the HREC, because we know how to get these things through the
HREC being
Human Research Ethics Committee approval. Thank you very much.
We have a lot of acronyms.
Yeah, I know. So apologies in advance. So we defined this sort of like a safety cohort, which means that we limited number of patients. We tested the product We go through the safety committee meetings to ensure that the patients are safe. There hasn't been any adverse events related to the product. And then once there's a set of checklists met, we essentially move to the actual recruitment of patients, more patients for the actual performance of the product. So we are in this sort of like a safety cohort of the human research ethics approvals that we needed to go through. We need to treat 3 patients initially, conducting a safety committee meeting over that 3 patients. Once all those 3 patients reach the 1-month follow-up period, we can essentially go through all the results with a few independent medical doctors. And then once everything is met, then the actual recruitment of a second cohort, which is outside the safety cohort, will be started. One question that will be asked is, so we're basically not going to get any performance data from the safety cohort. No, that's not true. We're still going to see some performance data from limited number of patients, as I said, 3, but still it's just a very important stepping stone towards completing this clinical trial.
Yeah, it's exciting. And just while we're on that as well, our Tetraderm clinical trial, which is also on track and underway, excitingly looking at potentially bringing some new sites on for that as well. So again, relentless execution that we talked about before. So did we have to go through that same process of safety cohorts, and maybe just explain how that...
Yeah, so the safety cohort for Tetraderm clinical trial was bigger than the safety cohort for Tetratherix. It was 8 patients as opposed to 3 patients. And that's the genesis, that's the nature of these clinical trials. Tetraderm is very much more scar reduction oriented. Therefore, ATRAC was requesting us to have a bigger cohort of the patients for the safety cohort of the trial, as opposed to the 3 for oncology. It's very hard to understand the rationale behind it, but you know what? It is what it is. We just need to execute relentlessly.
Yep.
So yes, we have completed that safety cohort of the Tetraderm clinical trials, and we are in the second cohort, which is essentially performance of the product in reducing scar in areas that are more aesthetically sensitive, face and neck. And that's the stage that we are. And as Will said, that we will be able to recruit more patients in a close future as well.
Awesome. So just quickly to recap, again, from a technical and product development point of view, looking at FY25, we touched just very briefly around the FDA and the pre-submission meetings that we've had there. I think it's important just to quickly note on the FDA approach, our view, and it might be a bit different to what some medtech developers or businesses in the world have. As far as regulators go, we view them as our friends, and we don't shy away from having more rather than less interactions with them. And I think this is an example where that's been helpful for us to understand what it is that they're expecting and looking for, and vice versa, for us to educate them about what the polymer technology is and what to expect from it. So I think that's been a really important process.
Absolutely.
I suppose just to quickly touch on the last bit here around FY25's highlights of product development and sort of technical aspects. We're on track for FDA for our first products for bone regeneration.
Yeah, in financial 26, absolutely.
Maybe worth just very quickly, Ali, if you can, on the 2 different approvals, how they relate, obviously working in parallel across the different use cases. It might just to add some clarity around that.
Sure, absolutely. So for Tegenix, our dental product, the animal study is progressing. It is 24 weeks animals, 24 weeks long animal studies before and after implantations. I won't get into the details of that. That is undergoing as we speak, as well as for our Tegenios, which is essentially, again, bone graft extender, but for orthopedic applications in long bones, which is essentially not in the dental and oral surgeries. The animal study for that is also progressing as we speak. The beauty of our platform is that these Tegenix and Tegenios are basically the same products in the different volumes. So the safety information that we'll get for either of these 2 animal studies and additional safety studies that we need to complete as a part of the FDA regulatory requirements would feed into both, and in our future products, which use basically the same core technology. And that is, again, it's the beauty of our platform, this interchangeability of the data sets that we're acquiring over time, and what makes our future product developments cheaper and more cost effective.
Yeah, awesome, mate. Thank you.
Yep.
Changing tack a little bit into manufacturing, Tez. So as we touched on before, and again in the lens of reflecting on FY25 from a manufacturing point of view, but excitingly as we go into FY26, might be worth you just sort of highlighting for us when we talk about upscaling our existing manufacturing capabilities, what that means, but then importantly, how we think about the transition into our much larger capability and manufacturing, obviously as it relates to the IGP grant, which is a big part of it. But I like to always think about it as we read the book backwards and we think from FY27 where we need to be in a production capability perspective and what then needs to happen for us to be at that point around audits and commissioning. I think it might be good if just to get your view on that and an explanation.
Sure. So, as you said, reading the book backwards, we know that we are going to have significant customer demand for our product in the coming years. So what do we have to do now to ensure that we're ready for those requirements? And we've spent a lot of FY25 on reconfiguring and optimizing our current lab at Ralph Street. Cherie, I think it was in the order of a couple $100,000.
There's about 600K
600
that
grand.
we've invested
Yep, 600
in
grand
Ralph
that we've
Street here.
invested.
Yeah.
So that optimization was both in reconfiguring the lab so it was more suited to our process, as well as the capital expenditure, the equipment, QC technology, and that really lays the foundation for knowing what we need, what sort of equipment, what sort of personnel, the flow of the lab, and process optimization, so that we do have a good lens into the coming years to really nail those commercial objectives.
Awesome.
And it's very interesting to know that also, like that 600 that we're talking about, part of that was for the lab downstairs in the Ralph Streets, but also the equipments that we buy essentially will be moved into a new facility, and we're getting ourselves ready with these equipments that we currently have.
Correct. So it's not only the fixtures and fittings, the tangibles and the intangibles, right? So the knowledge we gain from this process is definitely going to help us with the new facility.
Absolutely. No, I think again, advanced manufacturing capability for a young medtech in the Australian ecosystem is something that I don't think there's been new examples of that for quite some time, and we're really excited to be sort of developing the ecosystem and bringing on more people and growing, and I think it's a really exciting next inflection point for the business. So you've certainly got your work cut out for you with the production team, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah.
One team.
No pressure.
One team.
All right.
Exactly. Okay, cool. No, thanks for that. And so I suppose that leads us then into partnerships, which I think is, again, something that is differentiated in the story that we have as a business and is deliberate around how we want to have these partnerships in place in parallel, but have multiple of these going through. And Ali, you touched on the FDA benefit of having the data set that can cross and be interchangeable. And I think the partnership piece for us is also something that we are learning and refining the way that we put these partnerships in place. And the joint venture piece is maybe an example of that we've really refined over the last couple of years. And it might be good just to cover off really quickly how we think about the opportunities that we're bringing to market. And through the IPO process, we've talked about this difference between displacement and disruption. I think that's a really interesting point of how we think about the joint venture. In particular, we'll get on to some of the FY25 achievements and things that we've done in that sense in a little bit. But how we often think about the products we bring to market is either through something like disruption, which is where there really isn't anything like that in the market currently, and we're bringing a new way of doing things to market. Tetratherix is a perfect example, right? So there's nothing in the market that can be a flowable extender of graft that performs in the way that we do. And so we've got something that's differentiated, but we've also got a bit of time to do it in the right way with the right partner, and so that's what we've done with both dental and now increasingly with orthopedics as well. But then on the other side of the coin, we also have products that we're bringing to market where we're displacing something or some group of products that are already out there. And so that's where I think for us, the way that we think about displacing things is much faster with rapid deployment and rapid development. Tetratherix is a perfect example, right? So it was February 2024 where we came up with the idea of actually using the solution, again, the same platform technology to create and maintain space in the body for prostate radiation oncology applications. It was only 18 months until we had human research ethics approval, and we wanted to move rapidly because there are technologies that are on the market that we know through our engagement, again, with our partners, bringing it back to our objectives, both here in Australia and offshore, that they've highlighted some deficiencies with the incumbents that we want to address. Again, bringing it back to patients, because the patient outcome is a lot better for using our technology than the incumbent. So this disruption versus displacement thing, I think, is a really important lens through which you can look at the JV model in particular. Tetratherix we've talked about as a JV structure with our friends at Coda Health, who are helping us bring a novel way of creating and maintaining space for radiation oncology to market, and then BioOptics is another one. Maybe Ali, you can just quickly touch on the BioOptics side of things. I know we've been working a lot through the agreement itself and how it looks and what the opportunity is ahead. Again, speaking to what we've achieved in FY25 and the BioOptics agreement, maybe just touch on quickly for everyone to get their head around it.
So we execute that BioOptics licensing and supply agreement towards late last financial year or early this financial year. That
late
June,
last
July,
financial year.
like that June, July is just like a
bit of a blur, isn't it?
It is. I blame IPL. We execute that licensing agreement with licensing and supply agreements with BioOptics recently. It's been a very interesting journey understanding, as you said, that displacements versus disruptions. We are displacing a technology that's it's been used. As we are constantly mentioning it, we are reducing our reliance of the productions on animal-derived products. We are fully synthetic. We are addressing a range of unmet needs by doing that. And working very closely with the BioOptics arm, which are very much clinicians with a very sort of like a clinical oriented, whereas us, which were both like a combination of a commercial patient as well as the R&D. It's just a very interesting combinations. I really believe that we are filling each other's blind spots very effectively. And in this past 2 months, we've been having multiple conversations with strategic corporate partners for BioOptics. And in doing that and supporting that BioOptics joint venture, again, it's becoming more and more evidence that how we can use our platform to address unmet clinical needs, both for clinicians as well as for patients. Yeah, it's been a very interesting journey in that respect from our commercial development as well.
For sure. No, I think that JV structure is a really novel way, I think, of bringing products to market, but I think it can probably only be possible or capable because we've got that platform opportunity that means that we can spread some of the resource and we can do these things in parallel. So really exciting. And again, we've got Tetratherix and BioOptics as the two spacer opportunities that are under current JVs. And then we've got Tetraderm, which is our sort of fifth of the 5 products that we're bringing to market. And so exciting to go through that clinical pathway. So I think in hindsight and retrospect in FY25, we achieved a lot both in the Tetratherix and the BioOptics joint venture agreements, progressing the FDA in bone regeneration as well as the clinical trial in Tetraderm. So really exciting future, and I think from a technical and product point of view, we're going to keep seeing these inflections and milestone events over the next year, but into obviously FY27 and beyond. So really exciting. Changing gears a little bit just into the people piece. We've touched a bit on some of the other strategic pillars and the objectives of the business in patients and partners and product, etc. I think for me, when you think back to FY25, we've grown the team significantly. I think having Cherie join as our CFO is for me a highlight of the people piece of FY25. I think having Cherie join the ELT and the business more broadly has been a breath of fresh air in the finance part of the business, but I think more broadly in the whole company as well. So it does feel like it's been a lot longer than 6 months, I've got to say. We've
I agree, but in a good way.
Exactly. We've achieved a lot in that period. And I think a couple of points just to touch on from a people perspective. Culture is such a big part of who we are and what we do, and maintains that sort of progression and momentum in the business. Again, Cherie's been great in highlighting certain points for us in quantifying and qualifying every part of the business, and people is no different. And one of the things that I think we're really proud of that Cherie's mentioned and brought up to us is the attrition rate we have in the business, which I'm very happy to say is 0%.
Perfect.
I don't think there's very many businesses that can say they've never lost anyone.
Exactly.
And I think I'm really proud of that as the CEO of the business, but I think more broadly we should all be really proud of that. From a cultural and people perspective, Cherie, being the most recent addition, particularly to the management team, how does the culture come across to you? How do you think about Tetratherix as it relates to people and to the culture of the business more broadly?
Yeah, look, I think it's just really refreshing is probably the word I would use from a cultural perspective. Everyone's very inclusive and welcoming. I think we have a lot of fun at work. You know, we've got obviously, the patient in mind in everything we do, but we also kind of work together. If I think back to the IPO, it was all hands on deck. Everyone was helping each other. It was a bit of a roller coaster, but we worked together as a team and kind of got through the highs and lows. And so I think it's a great place to work. I think the graduates and the women in STEM statistic is amazing. Some great diversity in the team. Again, that's something we should feel really proud of. I think the other thing, obviously being a listed company, we did have to go through compliance and policies, and everyone just, was open and curious and very welcoming of what was required for a listed environment, which isn't the most exciting thing in someone's day to read policies, but we did that, and everyone sort of understood the need and the intent for that. And then look, finally, I would say from a board perspective as well, I think the board has, come in, we've had sort of some newer tenured members, as well as yourselves and David Bottomley as kind of 3+ year in tenure. And I think just kind of bringing that diversity of skills and thought has really rounded out how we think about things. And I would say everyone's point of view is valued. We'll have healthy debate and really at the end of the day focus on our strategy and all hold hands to get there.
Totally. And I think, again, trying to reflect on FY25 and the people pillar of the objectives and the strategic area of the business, I think the board structure that we've managed to put together and are lucky enough to have the individuals on the board that we do, that's a big highlight for me for FY25. I think it speaks to how we operate as a business, but I think the opportunity that we've got ahead of us and the ability for us to attract the type of directors that we have, I think has been fantastic. So again, really excited and pumped to work with them into FY26 and beyond.
The importance of the board was very obvious during the IPO process. All the late board meetings that we needed to get through, the roller coaster that you talk about without opening it too much. But that's the beauty of again and another Navy SEAL approach, even on the board level.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Totally.
So then I suppose just to quickly change gears a little bit into the financials, Cherie, and again, the short time that you've had, relatively speaking, in the business has been such an impressive sign of what impact that you've had on the business is the financial acumen that we now have, and rightly so, is a key part of value creation, as we touched on in our strategic pillars. But on the reporting side of things, obviously having just released our yearly results in our annual briefing, how or what are the key parts of that financial performance and the financial part of the business that you wanted to highlight maybe?
Yeah, look, for sure. I think, as I said, probably the best year end, and I've done many, that I'm very pleased to kind of report on. We basically have an underlying loss of around $4.6 million. And when I say underlying, I'm really talking about backing out two critical one-off non-recurring items, being the IPO costs and a non-cash accounting adjustment for revaluing our financial instruments. It is unfavourable versus prior year, but as I mentioned earlier, we really are focused on investing in R&D and increasing our headcount and our listed company costs. So again, nothing out of the ordinary, absolutely aligns to our use of funds that we had in the prospectus. So, you know, the P&L is absolutely where we thought it would be. From a cash flow perspective, it's always great to see a really healthy cash on hand, so $29.3 million for cash on hand. So obviously we had pre-IPO capital raising of around $11 million, and then the IPO itself at $25 million. In our Appendix 4C, so our quarterlies, you can see our use of funds. We've spent 12% from May to June, largely in IPO costs. So again, very much on track. And it's really pleasing to see from a going concern perspective, we've absolutely, you know, got runway over the next 12 to 24 months, you know, no issues whatsoever. Obviously from higher improved cash position, our working capital and our net assets is in fact in a net asset position. Last year in FY24 we're actually in a net liability position, so great to see that, you know, turn around and really set us up for the future. And then I guess just double clicking a little bit on R&D, because it is a principal activity of the business. We are investing around 38% of underlying opex in R&D, so we expect that R&D ratio to be in the 30s for now into the future for some time, because it is our critical kind of pillar. We also see a 22% improvement in our R&D tax incentives. So again, you know, that is absolutely ongoing income that we can reinvest back into the business. And then obviously the final thing that's coming that we've announced is the IGP. So again, that isn't in our use of funds assumption. So, you know, we are, as you will have seen in the announcement, getting a $3.3 million non-dilutive grant through the federal government. Around 2/3 of that is in FY26 and the balance in FY27. We will look to redeploy that and reinvest in R&D and advanced manufacturing capabilities, just to really, you know, future-proof and get us ready for that commercialisation of our bone regeneration franchise. So, you know, in summary, you know, delighted to present such strong results. You know, we're in a really great position and look forward to kind of really focusing on those use of funds and really, you know, standing firm on that strategic resource
Cherie,
allocation.
one thing that I really liked about one of the graphs that you plotted was the distribution of the R&D funds with FY24 versus 25. In 24 we were more on a bone regenerations, but now in FY25, because as we're getting closer to commercializations, the portions of bone regenerations is being decreased, whereas the tissue space, tissue healing has been increased. So it shows that sort of like a dynamic
being
movement.
very deliberate about where you allocate, and you know, it goes along with the commercialization readiness, and so we're shifting more into tetraderm, as you said.
Absolutely.
No, that's awesome. And I suppose a really good point that I think has come through as an important part of the business, if you like, is that core R&D capability of what we do. 38% is a pretty significant proportion of opex to be spending into R&D, but again, it has always been a focus and always will be, and so that will continue. And so I completely agree with that, and think that is something that we will make sure we maintain into the future. So Ali, I suppose on that point, as we start to think through what we're looking forward to in FY26, and from a technical and an R&D perspective, given we are spending that proportion on R&D, what are the things that you're looking forward to, and the bits of FY26, particularly from a technical perspective, that gets you excited?
Sure, absolutely. without a doubt, TGenix, TGenios FDA clearance is a two big milestones that we will achieve. And with the R&D that we will have is obviously, as Cherie mentioned, especially with the support of the IGP grant, our investments into the pipeline developments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, as that then relates into the commercial benefit of having such a broad R&D capability and platform, is that partnership piece. And what I'm looking forward to in FY26 is further progressing the JV partnerships that we have in place with both BioOptics and Tetratherix. But I think also, as we talk about orthopedics, one of the things that I think I've had a few questions on is, what's the progress and how do we think about an orthopedic partner? And I suppose for us, again, to your point before, Cherie, about partnerships, we want to make sure that we're making the right decision as well as them making the right decision on who to partner with us. And so I'm really excited about progressing some of those discussions, and we are having multiple of those strategic negotiations and discussion processes with market leaders in the orthopedic space. And so that for me is a really exciting part of the partnership pillar that we have for FY26. And so I think as we think about the financial acumen of the business that allows us to do the R&D, which leads into the commercial benefit, it's a really nice flow of the strategy. And then the last piece of that puzzle, Tez, is the manufacturing, right? So that's where,
very exciting.
Again, FY26 is a very critical year in the upskill and the capability increase in production that I'm really excited about. But
likewise. As you said, the manufacturing and our new facility is going to be a key focus of our FY26 deliverables. We have signed the heads of agreement, and hopefully the lease will be signed soon for Tetratherix HQ, which is roughly 15 times bigger than the current facility that we're in now. So we've designed it to cater for roughly 75 people. That's a few more than in the office right now. And really, really looking forward to it. And just rolling back to what I said previously, the FY25 experiences with regards to the lab reconfiguration, process optimization, and the way the people, our staff have contributed, has really given us a clear line of sight into the objectives, the imperatives, and how we're going to ensure that we are ready to meet those commercial objectives. Importantly, we've also got an MD SAP audits for, I believe it's August, September.
So just acronyms. They've got another one here, so let's highlight this one. Medical device single audit program.
Yeah, went blank there for a second, but thank you. So that will allow us, I guess, it'll complement our 13485, correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
Complement our 13485 and allow us to access more jurisdictions with less
it will be critical for our commercial
friction.
Partners to access Brazil market, Canadian, European, Australia.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
that's exactly right.
It's very critical.
So we're utilizing everything that we've got. We've got the premises that we're in now, as well as our new facility that we'll have in FY26, and that'll allow us to build up inventory, to really iron out any of the sort of technical kinks in the process that always occur. But look, we're coming from 10 years of development in this experience and development in this process, and I think we're really well positioned to execute on that upscale project.
And I think also from an employee value proposition as well, our headquarters will be in the new facility. So, you know, it's a great for all of the teams. So our head office as well as the production team will all be based in this new facility.
That
So
cohesivity of a team
yeah,
so
so
important.
it's super exciting as we grow.
I think also having visitation from overseas partners as well, as we start to do more of that, will be really important, so we can get some R&D team members from our partners who want to come and work with Ali and the team around creating new polymers and you know, developing the platform in a bit more detail as well. So that'll be allowing that to happen where, you know, the current facility probably doesn't necessarily
Not
you know,
conducive to
effectively allow, let's say, single toilet and no car parks is probably not an ideal environment, but
I can clarify, we will have multiple toilets and ample parking. So
there you go. Very good. Now, Cherie, did we want to go through any of the sort of final governance financial bit? Again, you know, coming back to the annual briefing that we've just gone through and the annual results, which we're really excited about releasing and moving into FY26. But anything more around the governance side?
Just a couple of things. So the first thing from a people perspective, we are, and this is per our prospectus, we are rolling out an employee share scheme in FY26 to, provide, a reward and recognition for our people. So that is in line with the prospectus. So, we're looking forward to absolutely having that incentive for all the employees. I guess the other thing is just in terms of R&D, we continue to look at investing mid 30% in R&D. As you say, it's our core. It's a non-negotiable, and obviously the IGP helps that massively. And then I think just from a liquidity perspective, our use of funds, we're not deviating away from that. We're talking about the new facility, that's all budgeted for in the use of funds. So, we're really set up, I would say, to ensure that we allocate resource as we say we will, and we'll absolutely ensure we, remain a operating going concern for the future.
Yeah, awesome. Fantastic. Well, I think that's covered everything off. An exciting inflection point in the business, our first annual results, only 2 months after listing, but still, regardless, it is a big inflection point and a big milestone for us. Thanks to you guys for all the help and the camaraderie and being colleagues over the last, many, many years, but in particular the last 12 months. The FY25, as we all know, has been a massive inflection point, and I think we are all very happy with the outcome and very glad to be listed on the ASX. So exciting times ahead. FY26 holds even more inflection points and things that we are looking forward to. So yeah, let's leave it there for today.
Awesome.
Again, big year ahead. Look forward to doing this next year, but we will keep continuing these sort of rapid and frequent communications that we think are beneficial for everyone in the market, shareholders or otherwise. So yeah, thanks guys.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks, Will.
Let's get back into it.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Sounds good.